We're going to try it again. Let it run its course. But if it buffers too much, I'm not going to be able to upload anything today. Hopefully it'll run smooth. I think they're having a sidebar or something.
5 through 120.
And permission to publish starting with 105 and then through 120. Well, if you just...
You may go ahead.
Okay, same as process as before, Ms. Smith. If you could just stand up and tell us what we're looking at here. First, in a general sense, what are we looking at?
This is the t-shirt that the victim was wearing when we located him.
Did this t-shirt have a number of defects in it that coincided with injuries that the victim had on his body?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when we're looking at People's Exhibit 105, there's obviously some graphics on the t-shirt, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then there's that angular measuring device there. Is that signifying, as we look through these photos, where specific defects were in the shirt?
Yes.
So can you point out the defect that we're looking at first in 105?
The defect here is going to be right here. There's cotton, white cotton behind it to help it stand out.
And then if we go to 106, is that a close-up of that same defect?
That is a close-up of the same defect.
107,
Here, now we're here.
sort of where it says Minecraft over the R, it looks like.
Yes.
And then 108,
Yep, close to you. That defect.
109. Those first two, would that coincide roughly with the left chest area, lower left chest area?
Yes.
And now would that coincide with, I guess, left shoulder area?
Yes.
Collarbone maybe? And then 110,
Close-up of that same image.
111,
To the arm. Here.
the sleeve of the arm,
Yes, left arm.
okay? And then 112,
Close-up of that same defect.
113,
Up to here.
so are we still looking at the left sleeve, just upper portion of that sleeve?
Yes.
114, I think,
Up close of that one.
115,
Turn the shirt over. And this would be the defect.
that appears to be a larger defect than the others, is that correct?
Yes.
And then 116,
Close version of it.
117,
Left arm again, back side.
118,
Up close.
119.
And that one just moved up to here.
And are we looking at the backside for both of those last couple of photos, the backside of the left sleeve?
Yes.
120,
Up close of that one.
left sleeve again.
Yes, sir.
All right, if you could go ahead and sit down. Or may I approach with People's Exhibit 121 through 141?
You may go ahead. Right.
Go ahead and flip through those and then let me know when you're done.
Okay.
Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, sir.
What are those photographs of?
The jacket the victim was wearing when we located him.
To sort of contrast what we just looked at, the t-shirt, was that a basic cotton t-shirt with the graphic writing on it?
Yes.
This jacket that we're going to look at next, is it more of a nylon type jacket?
Yes.
Is it the jacket that the victim was wearing that you recovered at autopsy?
Yes.
Are these fair and accurate representations as to what you saw of that jacket at the autopsy on March 18th, 2020?
Yes.
And at this time, I move for admission of 121 through 142 and permission to publish.
Mr. Cook?
It's done. We moved at the bench.
Okay.
About these,
Council approach, please.
Now we're having a sidebar. If you can see Leticia, keep a close eye on her, because I posted a video yesterday or day before yesterday of a juror bringing the question to the judge about her mouthing things and making motions with her hands. So if you can see her, keep a close eye on her.
All right. Exhibits 121 through 142 are admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
You may go ahead.
So Ms. Smith, same as before, 121 should be up on the screen here in just a moment. So tell the jury what we're looking at in 121.
This is the jacket the victim was wearing when we located him.
Is this the inside of the jacket, so the lining of the jacket?
Yes, sir.
So point out where you can see any defects in this jacket.
One here, here, here. This appears to be one here.
Okay. And then moving on to 122.
Up close to that first one that I pointed.
And would this generally be, since we're looking at the lining of the jacket, would this essentially mean that this would coincide with the victim's back area?
Yes.
Okay. 123,
Close to that one.
124,
Showing the defects right there.
again, is this still looking at the lining of the jacket, which would generally coincide with the back of the victim?
Yes, sir.
125,
Close to that one.
126,
Over here, same back side of the victim.
127,
Up close.
128,
We're here, now we're over here. It's still the same on the back side, and this is the lining.
sort of would this coincide roughly with the back shoulder? It looks like it's closer to the sleeve here.
Yes.
129,
Up close to that one.
130,
Right.
so is this getting closer to the top of the shoulder area of the jacket?
Yes, sir.
Still, are we looking at the lining of the jacket?
Yes, sir.
131,
Close to that one.
132,
Gonna be the hood with some defects here.
are we looking at the lining of the hood?
Yes.
Okay, 133,
Back I pointed to.
134,
Close to that one.
135,
Second one that I pointed.
136. And those last couple, also the inside lining of the hood.
Correct.
Okay. 137.
This will be the back of the jacket.
Is this just an, oh, I'm sorry.
Here, one here.
Essentially an overview of the back of the jacket.
Yes.
138,
First one that I,
139,
second one that I pointed to. Still on the back of the jacket.
140,
here, now we're over here.
141,
Still here.
and then 142.
Here's the defect. I was trying to see where at on the jacket.
Does it appear that this is closer to the zipper?
Yes,
Can you see the zipper there at the top?
here's the zipper.
Okay. Thank you. And Your Honor, now I would like to approach the witness with People's Exhibit 143.
All right, you may go ahead.
You had a chance to look at People's 143.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, sir.
What does it appear to be?
Pair of pants.
Photo of the pair of pants?
Correct.
Are these the pants that the victim was wearing when you went to the scene on March 17th and then the autopsy on March 18th?
Yes, sir.
Did you also collect those items?
I did.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the pants as you saw them on March 18th?
Yes.
And at this time, I would move for admission and permission to publish 143.
No objection, Judge.
Exhibit 143 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Permission to publish, there we go. Just generally give us are these nylon sort of athletic pants?
Yes.
Does it appear that there's, it's hard to tell, right? There's a lot of staining on this from decomp, I would assume.
Yes, sir.
But does it also appear that there's white stripes running down the legs of these pants?
Yes, 2 on each side.
Can you point those out for the jury, please?
There's one right here, and then the other one's right here.
Okay. All of these items that we just looked at, so the pillow, the blankets, the t-shirt, the hoodie, and these pants, I think it may be obvious, but were these heavily soiled with decomposition from Gannon's remains?
Yes.
Associated with that heavy decomposition, was there quite a smell associated with them?
Yes.
Is that why we're not bringing those items into the jury to let them have to deal with that as well?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, finally, would like to have my investigator approach the witness with People's Exhibit number 86.
All right, may go ahead.
And just so that we're all clear, this is the item that we talked about prior to.
Okay. Is there any objection as to the foundational issue of this defense? Okay. Mr. Allen?
So, Ms. Smith, our investigator Cecil Weir is going to help with this item because of the size of it. But if you could just take a look at it and let me know if you recognize People's Exhibit 86.
And I didn't hear your question over the paper.
Yeah, that paper was a little loud. Do you recognize People's Exhibit 86?
I do.
What does it appear to be?
The olive green suitcase that was at the scene.
Did you collect this scene at the River Bridge or was it at autopsy?
At the River Bridge.
Okay. Does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition today as the day that you recovered it?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 86.
Mr. Cook?
Objection.
Exhibit 86 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Your Honor, because of the decomposition material on this item, we are asking for permission to not leave this here in the courtroom, but I would like to have permission for our investigator, Mr. Weir, to show this item to the jury by holding it up. It is a larger item.
You may. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll be glad.
I apologize if you hear stuff in the background. I'm cleaning and doing laundry while recording.
Thank you, ma'am. Does that suitcase have a broken handle on it as well?
Yes, sir.
If Mr. Weir holds that up, can you point that out to the jury?
It's handle right here. Attached.
And then just so that we're all clear, although I think it's probably fairly obvious, but we need to build a record as well. All of the items that you saw out at the Escambia River Bridge, so the 2 blankets, the pillow, and Gannon's remain inside of this suitcase?
Correct.
And if I wasn't clear before, the clothing that I mentioned and that had heavy decomposition material on them, was that true also for the blankets and the pillow?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And so at this point, Judge, I would ask if we can just have our investigator take that item back out before it starts to.
Is there an objection?
Oh, Your Honor.
All right, you may, go ahead. Just take it out.
He's trying to collect the baggage or the paper too. Stephanie? All right, Ms. Smith, just a couple more questions for you. How long have you lived in that, I guess, greater Pensacola area?
45 years.
Are you familiar with several bridges in that area?
Yes.
The Escambia River Bridge obviously is the one that we've been talking about today, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there also an I-10 bridge
Yes.
and then a 98 Pensacola Bay Bridge, essentially?
Yes.
Of those bridges in the area, is the Escambia River Bridge less traveled or more traveled than the other bridges?
Less.
Less traveled. And then are you also familiar with I-95?
Yes.
Where's I-95?
It goes along the east coast of Florida.
Okay. All right, that would be my questions for this witness.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cook?
Your Honor, I don't have any questions for this witness. Thank you.
All right. Do any of the jurors have any questions for Ms. Smith? Just write it down, pass it forward. Looks like we might have a couple, so just write them down, pass them forward, and I'll have somebody collect them.
You want me to retrieve them, Your Honor, or?
Yes, yeah, just put them on the bar in front of you there, just pass them forward, put them on the bar in front of you, and then Mr. Allen, if you would retrieve those, please, and counsel approach. Ms. Smith, was the suitcase cleaned? It appears cleaner.
No, it was not cleaned. It was kind of hard to see through the plastic.
All right, and this is a timeline question. You visited the discovery site on March 17 of 2020, and the autopsy was on March 18 of 2020. Let's start there. Are those 2 dates accurate?
Yes.
And so you already knew on March 18 of 2020 that it was Gannon?
They didn't know for sure. They went by some pictures, and then I'm not sure what their procedures are for identification.
All right. I will allow reasonable follow-up as to those questions only. Mr. Allen?
Just on that last question, when we were talking about identification of the remains, was that just a tentative identification?
Yes.
Not a finalized identification? Do you know that a finalized identification came sometime later?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cook?
Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. You may step down. Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Morning, Your Honor. People call Trevor Seifert to the stand.
Mr. Seifert, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Morning.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first and last name?
My name is Trevor Seifert, spelled Trevorseifert.
I just mispronounced your name, so I apologize.
It's okay.
What is your occupation?
I am a senior crime laboratory analyst with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
And how long have you been with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Just over 17 years.
And what are your specific roles within that title?
Up until September of last year, I was in the biology section of the Pensacola Regional Operations Center. And in the biology section, we do DNA analysis.
And what kind of experience and training do you have in the field of DNA analysis?
Education-wise, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from Southern Oregon University and a PhD in Microbiology and Immunology from the University of Florida. At the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, I also went through a one-year training program in forensic biology.
And does the field of DNA analysis include the field of forensic DNA analysis?
Yes.
And have you been practicing in that field within the role that you just described? And approximately how many investigations have you been involved in where you've done some DNA testing in the field of forensic DNA analysis?
Hundreds of cases, and we actually count the number of samples that we analyze, and it's well over 8,000.
And do you have some continuing education that you participate in to stay up to date in that field?
Yes, we have required annual continuing education, and we keep up to date with current literature.
And have you been qualified as an expert in a court of law to testify in the field of forensic DNA analysis?
Yes, in the Florida 1st and 14th Circuit.
Approximately how many times?
Approximately 55.
First time in Colorado, I take it?
Testifying, yes.
Okay. At this time, we'd ask the court to allow Mr. Seifert to testify in the field of forensic DNA analysis as an expert.
No objection.
All right. Just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, a person may be qualified as an expert by education, experience, skill, or training. You are not bound by the testimony of a witness who has testified as an expert. The credibility of an expert's testimony is to be considered as that of any other witness. You may believe all of an expert witness's testimony, part of it, or none of it. The way you give the testimony is entirely your decision. Mr. Young?
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you please educate us in the field of DNA? What is DNA? Where does it come from? That kind of thing.
Sure. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is a molecule that is found in every cell of your body except for mature red blood cells. It carries the instructions for the development and structure of all living organisms.
at FDLE, or Florida Department of Law Enforcement, we do what is called STR DNA analysis, and STR stands for short tandem repeats. Short tandem repeats vary between individuals, and the number of repeats at markers that we look at are what differ between individuals and create their unique profile. We look at 21 different areas in the DNA, which I'll call markers, and 3 gender markers that can tell us whether the DNA is consistent with a male or a female. In order to develop a DNA profile, I will take a sample from biological material and do chemical processes which will break open the cells, releasing the DNA into a solution. I then place this solution onto an instrument that quantifies the amount of DNA that I was able to obtain from the sample. And if I reach a high enough threshold, I can then use a process called polymerase chain reaction, which amplifies each of the 21 markers that I'm looking at millions of times with a fluorescent tag that enables another instrument, a genetic analyzer, to measure the length of each of these fragments, which determines the number of markers, the number of short tandem repeats, and gives us a profile for the individual or the sample.
Can you talk to the jury about the uniqueness of these profiles that you've been talking about?
Yes, depending on the number of markers that I'm able to generate a profile from, statistics differ with how unique it will be. But overall, a DNA profile of an individual is unique to that individual, and only a identical sibling will have the same DNA profile.
And where do we get this uniqueness from? Where does our DNA come from?
Half of your DNA comes from your mother, half of your DNA comes from your father. And so the combination of the DNA from both, so you have 2 copies of DNA, 2 copies of these markers. And so at each of these markers, I will get a number of repeats. So one marker may have 5, let's say 5 of these short tandem repeats from your mother and 10 from your father. So at that marker, you would be considered a 5-10. And what we're looking at when we're comparing profiles from a questioned sample to a known individual, we're looking at those numbers and matching those numbers.
So if we have, for instance, a body found where we don't know who that person is, would we be able to create a profile if the DNA was in good shape and then determine who the parents of that individual were, or vice versa?
Yes, we can.
When we talk about the field of forensic DNA analysis, I think you just alluded to it a little bit in your previous answer. Are we talking about having a known DNA profile and then unknown DNA profiles to figure out if there's a match or if there's some consistency between the two?
Yes, so in most cases, we're dealing with evidence from a crime scene, looking for a suspect. So we're looking for the DNA profile from the evidence and then comparing it with DNA profile from an individual said to be involved in the case. In other cases, we're looking at unidentified human remains and comparing that to DNA profiles from individuals that are in a missing persons database.
And so is there databases in the United States, for instance, where there's DNA profiles for unsolved crimes, things like that, where if you develop a profile, you can compare that to a database to see if there's a match?
Yes, there are.
And do agencies across the country submit DNA profiles to those databases?
Yes.
Now, where does this DNA come from? What do people leave behind where you might be able to obtain DNA profiles from?
Well, the majority of it is bodily fluids, blood, semen, saliva, tissue, and we can also obtain DNA from items that people have worn or handled, so epithelial cells or skin cells that are left behind, or hairs.
You alluded to earlier about crime scenes. Are there particular crime scenes that might deteriorate DNA?
Yes, DNA is stable in dry and cold environments. When it's out in the natural environment, DNA is degraded by the human body, once a cell dies, it releases enzymes that breaks up the DNA. Microorganisms also break up DNA. And so in hot, humid, wet or damp environments, the DNA is degrading rapidly.
I'm going to take you back to 2020, in particularly March 17th of 2020. Were you familiar with a body that was discovered underneath the Escambia Bridge there by Pensacola, Florida, around that time frame?
Yes, I was.
And after autopsy and investigation, were you asked to conduct some DNA analysis to confirm the identity of this individual who was found deceased under the bridge?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that. What did you do? And we'll get into your results in a second.
In the first submission of evidence that I received from our medical examiner, I received buccal swabs, which are swabbings from the inside of the cheek of an individual, and a card with a couple drops of blood. I then performed the analysis that I already explained, where I took samples from each, broke open the cells in solution, and attempted to obtain DNA profiles. The blood sample did not give me enough DNA to amplify and get a profile. And the buccal swab gave me enough DNA to attempt to develop a profile. However, the results were so low that I could not interpret the results.
And what was your understanding of the condition